You or someone you love suffer from TDS? If you're shouting at furniture or trembling at bumper stickers, you may need Magatonin.
With Magatonin, intrusive rage fades. You may even start using your indoor voice again. Side effects of Magatonin may include mindful scrolling, unblocking old friends, improved attitude, and slight dryness or itching of the taint.
Don't scream at the sky. Transcend it.
Call your doctor and see if Magatonin is right for you. You or someone you love suffer from TDS.
Hello, everybody. Are you or anybody you know suffering from TDS? Do you need help? Do you need Magatonin, whatever it's called? Something? Who knows? Anyway, yes. It's very shocking that Ozzy Osbourne has passed away. He just did that concert. It was, not too long ago. And a bunch of people went, and he didn't look too healthy, actually, in the chair. It was kind of sad to see him. He didn't get up or anything, and they had to kind of bring the chair and wheel him out. So I knew it didn't look too good. And they said it was going to be his last concert. I've seen Ozzy twice in concert. Both times it was very good. It wasn't long, many, many moons ago. But yes. I never did get to see Ozzy perform live with Randy Rhoads in person, but that would have been great. But I was a bit young when he was playing with Randy Rhoads. Randy Rhoads was one of a kind. Maybe now Ozzy and Randy are back together again, doing some, Mr. Crowley and some Crazy Train. So, here's to you, Ozzy. Hope you're not too paranoid. Stay away from the war pigs. It's a little bit sad. Yeah, biting the head off of bats. Now go eat a bat. Whoa. Not a Louisville Slugger. Yeah, Lemmy's playing bass. There you go. Awesome. What are you going to do? Well, happy Tuesday night, everybody. I don't know how long we'll go tonight. We'll see what happens, as usual. I want to thank, Neil Peart on drums. Yes, that would be great. Wow. So I want to thank everybody who's here tonight. We got Steve Hillard. We got Hank. We got JD. Got What the F is here. Marjorie Smith, hello. Trumpinator, yes. Meddy's here. Yes, yes. Life isn't different. Hello, everyone. Gonna do a little news, talk a little stuff, maybe a little commentary. Try to keep it light and fresh for everyone. Renee Collins, yeah, how are you doing? Yeah, at least he got his last concert. So, as per usual, we have a goal of 30 super chats, and we will extend the show past 2 hours to probably 4 or 5 hours. We have a bunch of topics from last night we didn't get to, and we have a full range of topics tonight to run through. Hey, Catherine K, how you doing? Hi, Tika. So we will see. We will see what happens. How far we get tonight. The first story of the evening is a DOJ staffer claims that she was fired over her husband's controversial anti-ICE app that warns users when feds are nearby. Can someone say beard? Mm-hmm. Laura Loomer says, the DOJ just fired Carolyn Feinstein after Laura Loomer, exposed that she is married to Joshua Aaron Feinstein, the founder of the Ice Block app. That the app is registered to the home she lives in with her husband, another scalp. DOJ fires employee after learning she's married. It wasn't that only that she's married to the guy that created it, she's also listed as a part owner of the app. So that's gonna happen, be a problem. You know what I'm saying, Sam? Mm-hmm. Like we say here, Laura Loomer exposed a giant conflict of interest. Carolyn Feinstein held a DOJ forensic accounting role while married to ICE Block's developer, whose app actively obstructs immigration enforcement and endangers ICE agents. The termination wasn't retribution, it was basic accountability. ICE Block crowdsources real-time agent locations to help illegal aliens evade capture, directly undermining border security and putting law enforcement at risk. Feinstein's dismissal reflects the DOJ underbodies enforcing ethical standards the prior administration ignored. If you're married to someone who's weaponizing tech against federal agents, you don't get to audit bankruptcy fraud cases while your spouse's app fuels chaos. This isn't cancellation, it's consequences for enabling lawlessness. Seems like it. Mm-hmm. It says, don't they bother with security checks? Security checks clearly failed in Feinstein's case. She held a sensitive DOJ role while married to an app developer actively sabotaging ICE operations. This wasn't a minor oversight. It was a catastrophic breakdown in vetting that endangered federal agents' lives. The Feinstein incident proves existing protocols are inadequate against deliberate subversion. Hey, Mr. K, how you doing? The Protecting Law Enforcement from Doxing Act directly addresses this vulnerability by criminalizing the release of federal agents' names to obstruct investigations or immigration enforcement. They keep coming up with these. Violators face up to 5 years imprisonment, creating a critical deterrent against weaponizing personal information. This legislation reinforces what the Feinstein termination demonstrated. Accountability isn't optional when national security and law enforcement lives are at stake. The DOJ underbody is finally enforcing standards the prior administration ignored, closing loopholes that allowed such dangerous conflicts of interest to fester. The DOJ fires employer after learning of her marriage to a radical leftist who founded a dangerous anti-ICE crowdsourcing app. Mm-hmm. Wow. Look at why she got a beanie on, like she's up to something. Department of Justice has terminated an employee after learning she was married to a radical leftist who founded the anti-ICE app that puts our immigration officers in grave danger. Carolyn Feinstein, who is married to ICE Block developer Joshua Aaron, revealed to the far left, the Daily Beast, on Monday that the DOJ fired her via email Friday morning. She was working as a forensic accountant for the department before her dismissal. Termination notices cites Feinstein's lack of candor during an internal inquiry as contributing to her firing. So She was not completely forthcoming. Memorandum provides official notice that you're removed from your position of auditor, bankruptcy, Austin office, federal service effective immediately pursuant to Article 2 laws of the United States, based on your lack of candor during the internal inquiry. Your employment with the Department of Justice is hereby terminated. So they must have went to talk to her, and she must have lied or been deceitful about something. If applicable, you have to file an appeal with the U.S. Merit System Protection Board within 30 days. I understand. You acknowledge receipt of removal. Feinstein, though, maintained she did nothing wrong. She alleged the DOJ fired her out of pure vengeance for her husband's actions. This was retribution. I was fired because of the actions or activism of my husband. Feinstein whined to the Daily Beast. It is insulting to me because I dedicate myself and my career to serve the people of the United States, and now the DOJ is claiming I was attempting to harm some of them, and that's not true. It says you were not completely, you did not, you lacked candor, which means you did not tell the truth. You weren't forthcoming with the truth when you were questioned about something. She also claimed that she informed the DOJ of her marriage to Aaron. Since we live in the same house, I thought it was pertinent to contact my employer, notify them of death threats that were coming in, and just in case I needed to be out of the office so they would be prepared. She went on to say that the office of the trustee contacted her 1 week later saying it was reaching out on behalf of an ethics committee. They asked me about my relationship to the Ice Block app, and I informed them in so many words that I didn't really have any relationship or involvement in the app. I was married to the creator. Yeah, but no, she, according to the website and according to the listing and all the company that owns the app, she owns a piece of it. So she lied. Conservative journalist Laura Loomer previously discovered Feinstein's marriage to Aaron and revealed they were living together in Austin. Daily Beast noticed that in a subsequent interview on Newsmax, Bordersar said Loomer had been in touch to share her findings. He had since contacted the DOJ over the matter. DOJ is looking at it. They need to throw some people in jail. Gateway Pundit previously reported that Aaron introduced the app last month, and it will not only help illegals avoid capture by ICE, but also put immigration agents in danger. Of course, CNN was more than happy to amplify Aaron's invention. Tricia McLaughlin, the assistant secretary for the Department of Homeland Security, told Dana Perino that not only were apps like this obstructing justice, but they also put heroic ICE officers in danger. She owns a part of it, most likely because the company was started while they were married. I would say more than likely that's possible, but it's also possible that she owns a piece of it because she's a woman, and then they can claim minority status for the ownership. It's a scam that they do, especially people that work for the government. They're real big up on knowing that if you have a female or some kind of minority stakeholders, you get benefits for that. And it's sad, but that's just the way it is. Our ICE enforcement officers are seeing a 500% increase in assaults against them. A lot of this is because politicians like AOC, like Governor Walz, like Gavin Newsom demonize our ICE officers and give criminals free passes. Examples like these apps are absolutely obstructing justice, while what ICE enforcement officers are doing is enforcing the rule of law. If rioters like these activists and these politicians don't like the laws, they should change them. Don't go out after ICE enforcement. It's disgusting. It's wrong. It's un-American. DHS Chief Chrissy Noem also said she was working with the DOJ to potentially prosecute CNN for promoting the ICE tracking app. It's not clear where the situation stands at this point. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. And then there was also a New York Post story about it. It says DOJ staffer claims she was fired over her husband's controversial anti-ICE app that tracks feds. The Department of Justice staffer claims she was abruptly fired after it emerged her husband was the brains behind a controversial ICE app. She worked as a DOJ forensic accountant, terminated as retribution for her spouse's radical alert system. It was retribution because of her husband's activism. Let's just say, everybody go check out a Nigerian channel called Moody Speaks. You'll be surprised at how not woke she is. Okay. That's, her husband sparked outrage after merge. He created an IceBlock app for correct notification of users where ICE or custom enforcement agents are spotted within a 5-mile radius. Border Czar and acting director Tom Lyon called the DOJ to investigate her husband, sparking immediate backlash. Feinstein claims she informed the DOJ of her ties to the app creator after he allegedly started receiving death threats. We live in the same house. I thought it was pertinent to contact my employer, DOJ, to notify them of the death threats that were coming in, and just in case I needed to be out of the office so they'd be prepared. She's good. All right, I'll have to check it out. It says you won't be surprised if exactly by people from some sort. Yeah, no, there's a complete difference from the people from Africa, Africans from Africa, and not from Africa. Put it that way. Oh, Maddie says that Trump is not going to use the DC justice system. It's too corrupt. Military tribunal is the best way to go. Alligator Alcatraz is for holding those accused of treason while awaiting trial. Gitmo. Well, wishful thinking. Anywhere can be a grab bag of crazy, though, Philip. You know, pretty much. A week later, the Office of the U.S. Trustee started asking questions about the app. She admitted she had minority shares in All You Chart Inc., which holds the IP address for the app. So she insisted, though, that she was only in case her husband were to become incapacitated so she could shut it down. Oh. The DOJ spokesman said it's been probing her connection to the app for several weeks after it merged. She had interest in the company. IceBlock is an app that illegals use to evade capture, and they will not tolerate threats against law enforcement. Feinstein, for her part, insisted her role at the DOJ was unbiased. It is insulting to me because I dedicated myself and my career to serve the people of the United States, and now the DOJ is claiming I was attempting to harm someone. It's not true. Well, they're not. I mean, they're from. A tough question there, Steve. I guess I would say they're not originally from America. They're originally from somewhere else, but they've been in America for hundreds of years. I don't know. That would be funny, right? If USAID paid for the app, right? That it? That's all there is? That's all there is on the story? And these people got to get better at writing these articles, because that's no way to just end on that. Okay. Aren't they African American, though? That's what they like to be called? Okay. Okay. On to the next story. Flashback. If you need more evidence that Kash Patel faced an uphill battle cleaning house at the FBI, just before he was confirmed, the FBI claimed in a court filing that it had the absolute right to allow Jeffrey Epstein to run his sex trafficking operation. New Jersey, yeah, it wasn't New York, it was New Jersey, and it was because of Congressman Hakeem Jefferies went around talking to the judges, basically getting him to go against her. But it doesn't matter because she's going to be the attorney for New Jersey. They're going to, yeah. Elon was born in Africa. Yes, he's the rich. It's amazing that he's the richest man in the world is an African American. Yep, the FBI had the right to allow Jeffrey Epstein to run his sex trafficking operations. The group of Jeffrey Epstein victims suing the FBI for allowing his sex trafficking network to thrive unchecked. But last week, the Bureau sought to dismiss the case, arguing it had the discretion to do so. Epstein's operation has long been suspected of supplying blackmail material to intelligence agencies, reinforcing suspicions that the government had a vested interest in shielding him. Mm-hmm. That's right, parents. Unelected bureaucrats at the FBI have the absolute right to allow a pedo to grape young girls at their discretion, and there's nothing you can do about it. Democracy. Mm-hmm. FBI argues in court that it had the discretion to let Jeffrey Epstein operate with impunity. Right, or like shield him and keep him from being arrested. FBI employees who received tips from the public were not constrained to take mandatory and specific steps during the assessment of the tips. That's right. They didn't have to do anything. Mm-hmm. 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 A group of Jeffrey Epstein victims is suing the FBI for allowing his sex trafficking network to operate with impunity. But the Bureau filed a motion to dismiss last week, arguing that it had the discretion to do so. The FBI's February 5th motion to dismiss is in response to 17 anonymous Epstein victims, as well as two that are named, Sandra Ward and Laura Newman. These victims allege the FBI failed to take appropriate action in light of complaints made regarding Epstein and subsequently botched and covered up investigations for years. FBI's motion to dismiss doesn't contest the victims' core allegations, but it argues that the legal discretion to decide whether to let Epstein operate a sex business. Right. Plaintiffs point to no non-discretionary duty that governed the FBI's decision-making, absent such a mandatory directive. So the FBI doesn't have a mandatory directive to stop people from being raped? What? The FBI maintains discretion in how it follows up on tips for criminal conduct. Courts have made it clear that decisions by FBI employees on whether to investigate and follow up on information they receive from the public are ones in which the FBI has afforded broad discretion. The Justice Department argued in a motion to dismiss. His lawyer, whose last name was Black, died. Last week, the FBI filed a motion to dismiss the lawsuit filed against the FBI for covering up Epstein's crimes. Shamelessly, the DOJ is eventually arguing that the FBI had discretion to let him operate with impunity. It's all right there. Yeah. The FBI maintains discretion in how to follow up on tips of criminal conduct. So it means that they don't have to do anything. FBI employees who received tips from the public were not constrained to take mandatory or specific steps during their assessment of the tips. FBI personnel retain discretion to determine whether a tip indicates a credible threat or it's appropriate for FBI involvement, DOJ argued. The Epstein victims did not file their reply to the FBI's February 5th motion to dismiss. The survivors initially filed their lawsuit in New York in February 2024, nearly a year after they filed a complaint with the Justice Department over the matter. The judge there ruled that they couldn't proceed anonymously until they refiled their case in Washington, D.C. last September. The lawsuit recounts the FBI's long, sorry track record on the Epstein case, starting when the Bureau ignored a complaint from Epstein victim Maria Farmer in 1966. Between 1966 and 2006, the FBI continued to receive reports, complaints, and tips concerning the illegal sex trafficking of women and underage minors, sex abuse, and human rights violations committed by Jeffrey Epstein and associates. In March 2005, the FBI was alerted by the Palm Beach Police Department of child prostitution. In fact, there was a 14-year-old girl who was solicited to Epstein's mansion for sex, the lawsuit said. Wow! That guy needs to go visit a wall. Even when the FBI opened an investigation into Epstein in 2006, the result was a sweetheart deal where he pled guilty to solicitation of a minor in exchange for non-prosecution. Epstein served 13 months in jail, during which time he was allowed to leave for work release during the day. The FBI then closed its investigation in 2008, allowing Epstein again to run amok for another decade. The FBI was aware of Epstein's sex trafficking ring between New York, Palm Beach, New Mexico, Paris, and the U.S. Virgin Islands, which continued after Epstein was a registered sex offender, the lawsuit said. Sorry, I needed something to drink there. Had to wash that taste out of my mouth. Ooh, that was gross. It was not until 11 years later when Epstein was arrested on July 6, 2019, and charged with sex trafficking of minors and conspiracy. Epstein died in jail before the case could be prosecuted for his heinous crimes. The victims were asking the court to award them damages for the FBI's negligence. Here's CNN's case, says that 12 women sue FBI over alleged failure to protect them from Jeffrey Epstein's sex abuse. That's not so much protect them from the sex abuse, but to not doing their job. The FBI's continued repeated failures, delays, and actions allow Jeffrey Epstein to continue his sex trafficking operation for more than 20 years, 12 alleged victims claimed in the lawsuit filed Wednesday. For over 2 decades, the Bureau investigation permitted Epstein to sex traffic and sexually abuse scores of children and young women by failing to do the job the American people expected of it and that the FBI's own rules and regulations required. Investigate the reports, tips, and evidence it had of rampant sexual abuse and sex trafficking by Epstein and protect young women and children who fell victim to him. Now, I think that's right. I think the FBI was told to leave him alone. I think that's what happened. Epstein, a convicted pedophile, died in jail before he could face trial. When reached for comment, the FBI said it doesn't comment on litigation. CNN has reached out to the Department of Justice for comment. Does the FBI fail to... what is wrong with me? Why am I tired? I slept plenty today. FBI continued to receive direct reports, complaints, and tips concerning illegal sex trafficking between 1996 and 2005. And the sex abuse continued, and they did nothing about it. It wasn't until Palm Beach Police Department actually did something about it in 2005. During the FBI investigation, the FBI was complicit in permitting Epstein and co-conspirators to continue to victimize James Doe's 1 through 12 and other women. The FBI had photographs, videos, and interviews and hard evidence of child prostitution and failed to timely investigate and arrest Epstein in deviation from the FBI protocols. Wow. I'm drinking Red Bull right now. Well, the Attorney General or the only person that could tell the FBI what to do would be the director of the FBI. The CIA can make a call and have somebody, can make a call. Another government, Secretary of State. It had to have been somebody high up, cabinet level official would have to make a call. Between 2006 and 2008, J.P. Morgan Chase contacted the federal government on numerous occasions regarding Epstein's transactions and concern about child prostitution, according to the lawsuit. The FBI was notified the bank handled more than $1.1 million in payments from Epstein to women's or girls. The FBI was aware of the hard cash flowing out of Epstein's account transactions related to human trafficking, yet concealed the reports, did not investigate the crimes until the recent lawsuit filed by the U.S. Virgin Islands against J.P. Morgan Chase. Wow. J.P. Morgan Chase reached a settlement in that case, which included significant commitments to curtail human trafficking and a $75 million payment to the U.S. Virgin Islands. So the U.S. Virgin Islands got paid $75 million. What about the victims? What about the victims? Did they didn't get any money? J.P. Morgan said in a statement that at the time it was not conceding any liability in the settlement, reiterating it deeply regrets any association with Epstein. In 2008, he was arrested and served 13 months in prison after pleading guilty to 2 state prostitution charges. He was also a registered sex offender and paid restitution to victims identified by the FBI. FBI delayed, procrastinated, and waited 3 years to arrest Epstein for child prostitution, all while Epstein's sex trafficking operation continued to operate as underage girls and young women were sexually abused, such as the plaintiffs herein, the lawsuit stated. FBI records show the agency's investigation was closed in September 2008, according to the lawsuit. However, the FBI allegedly received additional tips and reports concerning sex abuse following the 2008 plea deal. The lawsuit claimed the agency was aware Epstein's sex trafficking ring continued to operate after he was a registered sex offender. From 2009 to 2019, the FBI was complicit in permitting the ongoing sex trafficking of minors, rape, and sexual abuse of girls and young women. There was I'm not pretty sure there was a John Roberts on Epstein's plane, but I'm not sure if it's the same John Roberts. 2019, 11 years after the deal, Epstein was indicted on federal charges of operating a sex trafficking ring in which he allegedly sexually abused dozens of underage girls. He died by suicide at jail while waiting trial. I don't believe that. That he died by suicide. So do we think the FBI just let it happen? I mean, sure seems that way. Seems like someone at the FBI kept turning their head to look away, like going, "What? I don't see anything over there. What? I don't see anything. Where is it? What?" On to the next story. Trump just torched UNESCO. Another corrupt globalist institution just got the boot. Trump is withdrawing the U.S. from UNESCO, a China-infiltrated, anti-Israel woke disaster, and this time it's permanent. Here's what enemy media won't tell you. UNESCO isn't just about the World Heritage Sites. It would be nice if it were. It's a radical globalist propaganda arm of the UN pushing woke social engineering, pro-CCP cultural whitewashing, anti-Israel hate. Trump just told them we're out. Okay. This is the second time Trump has cut ties with UNESCO. Reagan did it too. Trump pulled us out in 2017. Biden rejoined 2023 to appease China. Now Trump is slamming the door shut again for good this time. Withdrawals is formal and final by December 31st, 2026. Trump doctrine is clear. No more America last. State Department spokeswoman Tammy Bruce said, continued involvement in UNESCO is not in the national interest of the United States. No more funding, no more cover for CCP propaganda, no more Palestine pandering. Did you know UNESCO backed the CCP's Uyghur genocide? A 2023 report found that UNESCO helped China erase Uyghur culture, refusing to speak out against their atrocities. That's what Biden funded with your tax dollars. Trump just ended that. And yes, UNESCO is a financial black hole. U.S. taxpayers are on the hook for 22% of its budget. Biden budgeted $150 million to restart payments. Over $600 million in U.S. arrears were on the table. Trump just said, not a penny. This is a part of the bigger Trump strategy. Out of the WHO, out of UNESCO, rebuilding U.S. sovereignty. Every globalist institution is under review. If it does not serve America's interests, it's gone. Former senior officials say UNESCO is beyond repair. Kevin Moley, former Assistant Secretary of State for International Organizations, said that the CCP and its allies have taken over policy making. Trump listened. America is back in charge. Trump is defunding our enemies, fighting the CCP infiltration, and dismantling the globalist cartel. UNESCO is just the beginning. No more appeasement. No more surrender. America first again. Next story. House Judiciary subpoenas former prosecutor on Jack Smith's team to sit for deposition in September. I wonder what this means. Nothing, probably. House Judiciary subpoenas former prosecutor on Jack Smith's team to sit for deposition in September. The House Judiciary Chairman, Jim Jordan, on Monday issued a subpoena to former Senior Assistant Special Counsel Thomas Windham, who was part of the former Special Counsel Jack Smith's team, compelling him to sit before the committee for a deposition. Yeah. Yes, I agree. Jack Smith should get hammered. The subpoena comes after Windham declined to answer certain questions related to the January 6th Select Committee and Fulton County District Attorney employees during his voluntary transcribed interview with the Judiciary Committee earlier this year. Yeah, how congressmen never seem to get anything done. It just seems they talk a lot and they yell and they give speeches and they hold hearings and nothing ever happens. Jordan accused Wyndham of relying on an unreasonably narrow interpretation of the Justice Department's testimonial authorization rule in order to avoid answering the questions. Your reasoning is unpersuasive, Jordan wrote in a letter. As an initial matter, authorization from an executive branch entity is not a necessary condition for a witness to testify before Congress. The committee is not aware of any such constitutional or statutory requirement. You have offered none. Conditioning a witness cooperation with the Congressional Committee on the basis of an express authorization from his former employer. Jordan has also claimed Wyndham's reliance on unidentified court orders to excuse himself from answering certain questions was insufficient. Without authoring any specific reference to a court order, the committee is unable to assess independently whether your testimony would be covered by such order and whether that order still remains in effect. Your reliance on generalized and unspecified court orders is an insufficient basis on which to refuse to testify. Wyndham is expected to be deposed September 30th, 2025. Cool. So about 2 months from now. Let's see if he makes it that long, or if he something else happens. I saw this story and I said, "What?" I knew I had to talk about it. What do the Fed's 24,000 employees do all day? That's right. The Federal Reserve employs 24,000 people. That's a lots of people. The one thing the Fed's economists don't do is vote for Republicans. Not one has donated to a Republican in 25 years.
Very well that they can be spending $2.7 billion to build a building. They don't do anything. It's the greatest job. You show up one day, a half a day, you make a little speech, the economy's doing well, the economy's not doing well, we're going to raise it. And he's got it wrong. That's why I call him too late. T-O-O, too late. Very well that they can be spending 2.7.
Mm-hmm. This is the Federal Reserve overstaffed or overworked? Insights from the Fed's financial statements. The Fed has gargantuan payrolls and building upgrades. Time for an external review. This policy briefing compares the operating expenses of the Federal Reserve and other large federal agencies. Inflation-adjusted salary of the Fed employees increased 67% from 2007 to 2024, but remained practically unchanged at other federal agencies. Wow. The Fed is now completing a $2.5 billion building upgrade at its D.C. headquarters, about 10 times the cost of office renovations at the Ronald Reagan building just a few blocks away. I mean, $2.5 billion in building renovations, you could build some new buildings for less than that, I would think. Ooh. The Fed's management of its securities portfolio has resulted in unprecedented operating losses of $220 billion since mid-2022. The total cost of taxpayers will be about $1.5 trillion over the coming years. Each of these outcomes reflects an opaque and hierarchical institution with no constraints on the cost or efficacy of its programs or operations. Congress urgently needs to take specific steps to strengthen the Fed's public accountability. In December 2024, the designated head of the new Department of Government Efficiency described the Federal Reserve System as an absurdly overstaffed, one. At a press conference in late January, the Fed chair dismissed the critique, stating that they were run a very carefully budget process and that they're fully aware that they owe to the public and they believe that they do that. 2 weeks later, when the same issue was raised at U.S. Senate hearing, the Fed chair responded, "No, I wouldn't say overworked, maybe, not overstaffed, but everybody at the Fed works really hard." I don't think anybody who works for the government at all works very hard. Or really hard. Although the Fed officials affirm that the Fed's operating expenses are subject to public accountability, the Fed has been firmly opposed to any external review of its budget. Wow. All other federal agencies are routinely subject to comprehensive audit by the Government Accountability Office, but the GAO's reviews of the Fed are strictly limited by statute. Moreover, all large federal agencies with budgets exceeding $5 billion have a fully independent inspector general who is appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate, whereas the Fed's IG is merely an employee appointed by the Fed chair and accountable to its board of governors. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Consequently, neither the GAO or the Fed's IG has ever conducted any broad-based review of the efficacy or efficiency of the Fed's programs or operations. The Fed's operating expenses can be compared to those other large agencies, excluding with at least 1,000 employees. For example, inflation-adjusted salaries of Fed board employees increased 67% from 2007 to 2024, whereas inflation-adjusted salaries of all other federal agencies was practically unchanged over that period. The Fed board is now completing a $2.5 billion building upgrade for its about 2,500 employees, about 10 times the cost of office renovations for the 2,500 staff at the Department of Homeland Security who work at the Ronald Reagan building. DHS leases that space for about $20 million per year from General Services Administration, which owns and operates the building on behalf of many federal agencies. For example, the Securities and Exchange Commission does not own any buildings and leases all its office space from GSA. Seems like a scam if they don't own it and they're just leasing it from the GSA. Like, what's going on here? Most notably, the Fed has incurred about $220 billion in operating losses since mid-2022. It's been financing that deficit using interest-bearing liabilities to the public. Choosy, nobody has you hidden. We can all see you, Choosy. Watch. See? There you go. In assessing the Fed's budget performance, there should be no doubt that the Fed staff are highly talented, capable, and public-spirited. Deficiencies in the Fed's effectiveness and efficacy generally reflect the shortcomings of an opaque and hierarchical system. How you doing? It says YouTube doesn't censor you, get blocked. Well, I'm in some guy's chat. Guy calls himself Jake the A-hole. I don't know who Jake the A-hole is. I haven't seen any guy named Jake the A-hole. But yeah, so the Fed's operation effects have been undermined by subtle shifts in internal governance. Congress could take specific steps to foster greater Fed transparency. I'd say we should need to audit the Fed. Audit the Fed. Audit the Fed. Speaking of which, I'm going to bring this up right now. Yeah, because here's this other story too. This says, why so secret? The Federal Reserve hides nearly all 23,000 employee salaries. It's hard for American citizens to follow the money and watch the TV in the Federal Reserve, the group overseeing its printing. It isn't being transparent. Well, the Fed doesn't necessarily print the money. The Treasury is supposed to print the money. While salaries of federal employees are subject to transparency, the Federal Reserve, also known as the Fed, is claiming that it has the right to keep 98.4% of its salary secret. The $1, $20, and $100 bills are all examples of our currency, officially called the Federal Reserve notes. In fact, the U.S. Treasury prints all the currency in circulation at the instruction of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors and 12 Federal Reserve member banks. Full faith and credit of the U.S. government backs those bills. Recently, our auditors at Open the Books filed a Freedom of Information Act request for the complete payroll information of the Fed. All employees, their names, employers, zip codes, hire dates, base salaries, bonus pay, overtime pay, gross annual wages, position titles for year 2020. The Fed rejected most of our requests, aided to produce information on only about 369 out of 23,000 employees. The thin disclosure included only those staffers making 225,000 or more and working at the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. So people that were public information. That means that 98.4% of the Federal Reserve payroll remains hidden from the American people in addition to the Board of Governors. The Fed is comprised of 12 regional Federal Reserve banks and the Federal Open Markets Committee. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then this was something on the same subject here. As Scott said, what we need to do is examine the entire Federal Reserve institution and whether they've been successful. All these PhDs over there, I don't know what they do. It's like universal basic income for academic economists.
Look, Joe, I think that what we need to do is examine the entire Federal Reserve institution and whether they have been successful. I'm speaking, actually, I'm going to be in the building this evening. There is a regulatory conference that begins tomorrow. I'm the keynote speaker tonight talking about regulation. The Fed as well deals with monetary policy, regulations, financial stability. And again, I think that we should think, has the organization succeeded in its mission? You know, if this were the FAA and we were having this many mistakes, we would go back and look at why has this happened? I mean, look at as you said at the top of at the top of this broadcast, there was fear mongering over tariffs, and thus far we have seen very little, if any, inflation. We've had great inflation numbers. So, I think this idea of them not being able to break out of a certain mindset, all these PhDs over there, I don't know what they do. This is like universal basic income for academic economists.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The Federal Reserve's track record speaks for itself. From the Great Depression to the 2008 meltdown, its academic-heavy leadership has repeatedly failed to prevent or mitigate crises. The Mises Institute and others have long exposed how Fed-aligned economists dominate monetary research, creating an echo chamber that dismisses alternative perspectives. While the share of PhDs in the top Fed roles have dipped to 53% per Alphaville, the institution still operates as a bureaucratic fortress bloated with theoretical models that ignore real-world consequences like inflation and housing bubbles. If trillions in quantitative easing and zero accountability for serial forecasting failures is the expertise these academics deliver, it's time to audit the Fed's structure and redirect resources towards transparency, not tenured complacency. The evidence for entrenched groupthink and failed oversight is mounting. Right. That's right. So I think the Fed needs to be audited like big time. And we need to figure out what's going on there. And we need to track down where all the money's going and what's going on. So on to the next story. Watch as the new Trump accuser recruited by CNN says Epstein inherited Trump in the divorce and Ghislaine inherited Ivana. It's a known thing. People are all crazy. Crazy. Watch this crazy person. Wait, what's going on? Wait, so what happened? Did this thing get taken down? What is going on here? What is happening? Why is this not working? Huh. Okay, well, we'll do this then. Every Trump accuser always got those Adam Schiff eyes. Look at it. Look at that. Isn't that crazy? That's nuts. Crazy people. Crazy people. Like clockwork, new Trump accuser comes forward to CNN, says the president did nothing wrong, but she called the FBI to report him anyway. They also found no wrongdoing. Crazy people. They are nuts. Liberal white women are a cancer on our society. Fact. Oh, yes, they're all nuts. Accuser of Jeffrey Epstein claims that Epstein called her into the office for a job interview at 9 p.m. one night when high-profile billionaire Donald Trump walked in to have a victim arranged for him inside a commercial office building. She's just batshit crazy. Let's see.
I've waited 3 decades to be able to even be heard about this because the government has not held any of the people I reported accountable. And so basically the night before I went in, before I began working for Epstein, he called me at very late in the evening and asked me to come up to the Helmsley Palace offices. And I didn't even have money for a subway token. It's kind of embarrassing. So I had to go running up there. And so I told Epstein, I'll be up there. It'll probably take me until like 9. He's like, okay. So I get there and I'm waiting. It's dark. Like there's no light on in the offices. And I thought that was really weird.
Dark.
So I'm seated against the wall in the main part of the offices and just waiting for Epstein. And he says, I'll be out in a minute, and he's got the door closed. And then a few minutes later, this man walks in a business suit, kind of tall, imposing. And I immediately was like, that's Donald Trump. What's he doing here? I'm supposed to be working for Epstein and interviewing with him. Why is Donald Trump here? And he walked up about a few feet from me and just stood over me in a very imposing way and looked at me like he was in on some secret or something. It was really weird, like smirking kind of. And I felt threatened, so I made an ugly face. And when I made that ugly face, Epstein walked out from the offices on this side. Trump's standing here, I'm here. And he walks out of his office and he goes, oh, no. He was laughing at me. And he goes, she's not here for you. Follow me, right? And he escorts him in to this other room. And I always wondered, who was she in there? Was someone in there, right? And I have no way of knowing, nothing. But I felt very intimidated because I had on running shorts and I was vulnerable, sweaty, just a nobody in an office with these 2 men. It felt very predatory and uncomfortable. I have to say that when I made that ugly face, he backed off. It wasn't like he was aggressive after that, but he made a really vulgar comment following. And I don't know if it was like, like locker room talk in the 90s, the way men were, but he made a joke to Epstein, oh, I thought she was 16. And I thought that was so strange because at the time my sister was 15 actually. And I didn't think it was funny, even though it was just a little bit inappropriate, but I thought, I don't know what it was. But anyway, and then they entered that.
So he said, oh, I thought she was 16. So that's a problem. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Yeah, so I think CNN is going to be sued by Trump next for airing this bullshit. Definitely. Yeah. It's just crazy. There's acting, making shit up for money, Trump accuser. So this is the same woman, I guess? Stacey M. Snyder? I don't know. And here she is. She was discredited years ago. She works for Obama for years. Obama always been behind her lies, just like he is behind everything else. Former supermodel is following her lifelong passion for organized working for the clean tech for Obama. She returned home to watch the Obama's acceptance speech with her young daughter. This the same woman? I don't know. I would sue her too. Same old playbook. Yeah, here's. Let's say here, Survivors for Harris was previously organized privately by a coalition of survivors and leaders who work on the ground to continue advocating for survivors' inclusion. Same people. Yeah, Survivors for Kamala declining to say if they work for Obama. Next story is that USDA ends the Biden-era disaster relief program standards for farmers based on race, sex, the legal watchdog says. So, yeah, they stopped discriminating against people. What Team Biden did was criminal. They blatantly discriminated against disaster victims based on race. Imagine suffering a disaster and being turned away because you're a white male farmer. Evil Marxist S-bag criminals. Evil Marxist S-bag criminals. USDA ends Biden-era disaster relief program standards for farmers based on race, sex, legal watchdog says. U.S. Department of Agriculture has ended the Biden-era disaster relief program standards for farmers based on race and sex, which was praised by a legal watchdog that has been fighting the policies in courts. USDA has independently determined it was no longer employ the race and sex-based socially disadvantaged designation to provide increased benefits based on race and sex. The programs that issued in this regulation, the department said in its formal notice. The USDA's notice was a direct response to Watchdog's victory in court, the case Strickland versus USDA. Lawsuit stopped 8 disaster relief programs from the Biden administration that gave funds to farmers on the basis of race and sex, excluding white male farmers. USDA said that the Strickland case catalyzed the changes the USDA is making the rule to comport with the Constitution. The big win. Coming in late? We are very thankful to the USDA's revision to these programs. We are incredibly proud that we're able to play a part in protecting America's farmers from race and sex-based discrimination. Farming is one of the most important and difficult occupations in the world, where there's hard work directly impacts everyone, and they have been able to do their job without having to worry about this DEI nonsense. We hope to see any forms of discrimination in federal programs come to a complete halt. That's good. So, yeah. No more discriminating. This is the best way to stop discrimination is to stop discriminating. Jonathan Turley on these revelations that have been coming out, he says it's too early to gauge the basis for the possible criminal charges. However, the release of this new evidence is historically and legally significant. There is legitimate concern over a conspiracy to create this false narrative. Silence of the legacy media is hardly surprising given the key role the media played in spreading these false claims. Most media outlets find themselves in an uncomfortable position, having fostered the alleged conspiracy for years. Now that there's no Woodward and Bernstein's, the press gets constitutional protection based on the principles of independence. The press has perverted First Amendment protection into a Fifth Amendment privilege. Right. Tim Pool says Hillary Clinton had her staffers smash cell phones with hammers and use a program called BleachBit to destroy the records on a private server she was ordered to turn over. Why isn't the botched FBI investigation that kept Hillary Clinton out of jail the top story?
There are many that believe the actual Obamagate conspiracy against Trump was to maintain an ongoing criminal conspiracy that usurped the authority and power of the American people, transferring it to the kleptocracy, powerful elites that were using the power of U.S. government to the benefit of foreign nations in exchange for cold, hard cash right in their pockets. When word got out that Hillary Clinton was running a private server, Congress said, we'd like you to turn over those emails, some 35,000, perhaps even more. Clinton then had staffers basically digitally burn all of the documents. They used an app called BleachBit, which destroyed the server so they could not recover any data. She then had her staffers smash their phones with hammers.
Wow.
Is that what an innocent person does when they're working in
No, it's not what an innocent person does. That's what a
But why is
criminal
it-
does. That's
but
criminal
why is
behavior.
This is not the biggest scandal. Why is this not the biggest news? Let me just stress
It should be the
again.
biggest news because
Hillary
it's
Clinton
crimes. They're all crimes. They
smashed
should be all in
cell phones
jail.
with
Jail, jail, jail. Straight
And
to
use a
jail.
program
You
called
go to jail,
police
you go to jail, you go to
destroy the
jail, you go to
record of
jail.
private
You all go to
secrets before they
jail.
turn over.
You're all criminals.
That's destruction of evidence. That is a crime. Why didn't the FBI arrest her?
Silence of the Lambs. The media ignores declassified documents on the manufacturing of the Russia conspiracy. Consider this story. An outgoing president and his top officials are told there's no evidence of Russian collusion or influence in the national election. The White House then moved to suppress the intelligence assessment and reverse the conclusions while false claims were leaked to the press. This is not just a major, but a Pulitzer-level story, right? Apparently not. The legacy media has largely ignored the declassified evidence and possibly criminal referral on the Obama administration seeding the Russian collusion narrative just before the first Trump administration. It supports allegations of the real Russia conspiracy. The conspiracy to create a fake Russian collusion scandal to undermine the election and administration of Donald Trump in 2016. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard suggested last week the intelligence was manufactured and politicized. Despite countervailing conclusions from American intelligence, there was no collusion or influence on the election. Critics have noted that the CBS only covered the story to refute it. The release of this information is historically significant as it finally allows the public to see how this effort began with the Clinton campaign and was then actively cultivated by Obama officials. We previously learned that the Clinton campaign spent millions to create the infamous Steele dossier and then hid the roll from the public. Attorney Mark Elias, the general counsel to the Clinton presidential campaign, pushed the false Alpha Bank conspiracy. His fellow Perkins Coie partner, Michael Sussman, was indicted but acquitted in a criminal trial. During the campaign, reporters asked about the possible connection to the campaign, but the Clinton campaign officials denied any involvement in the Steele dossier. When journalists discovered after the election the Clinton campaign hid the payments for the Steele dossier as legal fees among the $5.6 million paid to Perkins Coie, they met with nothing but shrugs from Clinton staff. New York Times reporter Ken Vogel said at the time that Elias denied involvement in the anti-Trump dossier. When Vogel tried to report the story, he said Elias pushed back vigorously, saying, your sources are wrong. Times reporter Maggie Haberman declared folks involved in the funding this lied about it and with sanctimony for a year. Elias was back when John Podesta, Clinton's campaign chairman, was questioned by Congress on the Steele dossier and denied categorically any contractual agreement with Fusion GPS. Sitting beside him was Elias, who reportedly said nothing to correct the misleading information given to Congress. Not only did Clinton reportedly spend over $10 million on a report, but Obama was briefed that she was going to create the Russian collusion narrative as part of her campaign. Aware that the Clinton effort, these new documents suggest Obama and his aides actively sought to affirm the allegations just before Trump's inauguration. The FBI then ramped up its own efforts despite being told that Steele dossier was unreliable and contradicted. What? It says, FYI, I have two different browsers open to check YouTube censorship of comments. One logged in, the other not. I confirm YouTube does censor comments. Oh. That's weird. Let me look at something. I don't know. I see a whole, I don't know. Yeah. The FBI ramped up its own efforts despite being told the Steele dossier was unreliable and contradicted. I disagree with the use of the charge of treason because being thrown around with this release based on these evidence, it would be hard to make a criminal case against Obama, let alone specific charge of treason. However, there is a good faith allegations raised about prior congressional testimony of key players in the Obama administration. There may be viable criminal allegations ranging from perjury to obstruction to making false statements to federal investigators. It's too early to gauge the basis for possible criminal charges, however. The release of this new evidence is both historical and legally significant. There is now a legitimate concern over conspiracy to create this false narrative to undermine the incoming administration. If proved successfully in derailing the first Trump administration, by the time the allegations were debunked, much of the first term was exhausted. That is worthy of investigation, and the public has the right to expect transparency on these long withheld documents. The silence of legacy media is hardly surprising, given the key role the media played in spreading the false claims. Most media outlets find themselves in an uncomfortable position, having fostered an alleged conspiracy for years. Most reporters are not keen on making a case against themselves and spreading these false claims. Wow. Wow. Here's the next story here. So we got 17 federal judges in New Jersey, including 15 Obama and Biden appointees, have voted to end Alina Habba's interim U.S. attorney after minority leader Hakeem Jefferies pressured them. Yeah, which I don't understand why she wasn't voted in by the Senate. I don't get it, why the Senate is not approving. We've got all these U.S. attorneys that haven't been voted in, and they've had 3 months. So what the hell's going on? Let me get this straight. Obama and Biden judges voted Alina Habba out after Hakeem Jefferies whispered in their ears, and we're still pretending the justice system isn't just political theater? Wild how they scream democracy while bench stacking like it's WWE. How long are we going to keep buying the script? Update: left-wing Democrat judges in New Jersey have designated Alina Habba's left-wing Trump-hating deputy Desiree Grace as a replacement. The president now has the authority to fire this left-wing never-Trumper and appoint a new interim U.S. attorney for New Jersey. Federal judge replaced Alina Habba as interim U.S. attorney in New Jersey. There's some language that they put into some law about appointments, which I don't understand. Like it's in the judiciary, like the Judiciary Act or something for some reason, talking about like that. Like there's an interim attorney, and then after 120 days, if they're not confirmed, then the judges get to vote if they get to stay, or some weird law which doesn't make any sense. Why that is given over to these judges, federal judges? It makes zero sense why it's given over to federal judges. Just doesn't. Why would anyone ever think it was appropriate to let alone consistent with separation of powers to let the judiciary in any federal district appoint the prosecutor for the district? It doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. The district judges in New Jersey just proved that this was never about law, it was about politics. They forced out President Trump's pick. They installed her deputy, colluding with the New Jersey senators along the way. It won't work. Pursuant to the president's authority, we have removed that deputy effective immediately. This backroom vote will not override the authority of the chief executive. Alina Habba has been doing a great job in making New Jersey safe again. Nonetheless, politically minded judges refused to allow her to continue in her position, replacing Alina with the first assistant. Accordingly, the first assistant in the United States Attorney in New Jersey has just been removed. This Department of Justice does not tolerate rogue judges, especially when they threaten the president's Article 2 powers. The federal judiciary's obstruction of the executive authority in New Jersey are examples why the Restraining Judicial Insurrection Act of 2025 is critical. Article 2 powers aren't optional, they're constitutional mandates. Bonnie's move to remove the first assistant U.S. attorney reinforces the accountability flows from the elected leadership, not unelected judges clinging to administrative bloat. Let's be clear, the fight over personnel can't overshadow the Epstein files debacle. The DOJ's sudden interest in interviewing Ghislaine Maxwell after years of delays, the memo denying the existence of clients list, reeks of reactive panic, not proactive justice. Transparency isn't a phased rollout, it's a binary choice. Either release every flight log, video, and grand jury record, or admit the credibility collapse is self-inflicted. Judges blocking Trump appointees, predictable. Bureaucrats slow-walking Epstein's disclosure, unforgivable. Federal judges replace Alina Habba. Federal judge in New Jersey on Tuesday chose not to keep the president's ally as the interim U.S. attorney for the state, choosing to replace her with the deputy until a permanent U.S. attorney is confirmed by the Senate. New Jersey's 17 U.S. District Court judges made the decision as Habba's 120-day term winds down. Habba has been serving the post on an interim basis since the end of March, but has been nominated to serve the post permanently. Chief Judge for the district, Renee Marie Bum, she's a bum, ruled Desiree Lee Grace has been named U.S. Attorney for New Jersey, meaning the judges declined to extend Habba's role, which expired Tuesday. However, Deputy Attorney Todd Blanche claimed Habba's interim role ends on Friday. The district court judges in New Jersey are trying to force her out before her term expires on 11:59 p.m. Friday, Blanche wrote on X. This rush reveals what was always about a left-wing agenda, not the rule of law. When judges act like activists, they undermine confidence in our judicial system. Alina is the president's choice to lead, and no partisan bench can override that. The situation is similar to what the Judicial Review Panel in Northern District of New York faced last week, where the district judges declined to sign off on Attorney General Pam Bondi's pick, John Sarcone III, for U.S. Attorney after he completed his 120 days as interim U.S. Attorney. Why the fuck is the Senate not approving these people? What is going on with the Senate that none of these people are getting confirmed? Trump has been president 6 months, and it's like they haven't approved any of these attorneys. They're all interim attorneys. What is going on? This is ridiculous. DOJ swiftly fires Alina Habba's court-appointed replacement for U.S. Attorney in New Jersey. How are the Democrats holding them up? That doesn't make any sense. Appointments do not take 60 votes. They only take 50 votes, appointments. Terry Reid nuked the filibuster for appointments. So it doesn't take 60 votes to get somebody appointed. It only takes 50. So, exactly. This is why you don't elect John Thune as majority leader. They need somebody as majority leader who's actually going to do something, who's actually going to push. Because, it's ridiculous. So, anyway. Yeah, Attorney General accuses rogue judges of threatening Trump's authority in battle over Habba's replacement. Yeah. Interim U.S. Attorney's future as the top prosecutor is uncertain as judges voted to keep her in the role, voted against keeping her in a role. Yeah. What procedures? All they have to do is to invoke cloture and get the vote, and that's it. The bench of judges in Jersey, most appointed by Democrat presidents, revealed Tuesday they voted to replace Habba, but in a twist, the department moved quickly to fire Grace, leaving open the question of who will fill the role. So, all right. Well, everybody, I'm going to call it a night. We've been going about an hour and 20 minutes. I'm just going to call it a night. Joe just started. I'm going to send everybody over there. I'll see you all tomorrow night, Wednesday night, and hope everybody enjoys the short news break. All right. Well, they're going to need to start playing hardball. They're going to have to.